Well, actually, nowadays I'm really happy that people are thinking of the preamble again, and particularly they're thinking about giving the constitution to themselves and thinking of themselves as we the people, and this is our constitution given to ourselves, and it's our responsibility to make sure all this happens. And this was of course presented to me in a meeting of the Bombay Catholic Sabha where I had gone to speak. And one thing that I feel, which Baba Sahib Ambedkar used to keep on talking about, the importance of fraternity. I mean, equality, liberty, we all understand. Fraternity, being able to understand people who are different from us, being able to work together with people who are different from us, and work towards a common goal. I mean, that is something which even the best of movements have to learn. I mean, today we're in a time where we're totally fractured. Everybody is in little bits and pieces. I seriously feel that if we are able to have more fraternity, more solidarity, we can really create some strength for people to regain what they have lost. Regain the economic justice, the social justice, the liberties, the equality which they have lost.
Can you tell us a bit about these pictures?
Oh, well, actually they're pictures of the, you can see the devastation of the coal mines in Jharkhand.
Okay.
They're actually of Jharkhand, and
Okay.
just a friend who had gone there had given me the pictures, but they reminded me so much of Chhattisgarh. It made me quite homesick, so I've just stuck them out
you
here.
put them
This
here.
is the way Raigad and Korba and all that look like.
How
now.
long has it been since you went to Chhattisgarh? When was do
Oh,
you remember the last?
The last visit, 2017 sometime. maybe.
2017.
Yeah, I had gone down for a case actually. I went down for a labour case. There was one worker. In fact, recently the worker came to visit me. That's very interesting.
Oh, in Bombay?
In Bombay.
Okay,
He came all
and?
the way because he got reinstated.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he got
so
reinstated.
he came to thank.
Yeah, but, well, not thank. I mean, he's really a very sort of, yeah. So I had gone down for his final argument. So that was the last time I went.
So that's 2017.
17.
So it's been a really long time since you've gone
Yeah,
to.
so I'm literally in exile.
You really miss the state. And
Very much.
Where were you in Chhattisgarh?
See, for the past, since 2007 or so, I had been in Bilaspur.
Huh.
And before that, from let's say 2000, I had been in Bilaspur. Actually, I started off in Dalli Rajhara,
Okay.
which was, I don't know, your generation has not heard of Shankar Guha Niyogi. He was a legendary
He's
labor leader.
Sort of your guru in one
Exactly.
sense.
Yes, yes, very much my guru. Sort of nahi, puri tarah se.
Okay.
And so he had this wonderful labor movement in Dalli Rajhara, which are the captive iron ore mines of Bhilai Steel Plant. It was a very different kind of union, not just a union for economic demands. So they had run their hospital, they run their schools, and they had, they were really ideas of changing the society. बहुत अच्छा. They had 17 departments, including a budget department and a Mahila Vibhag and a Swasth Vibhag and so on and so forth. Anyway, so I started off at Dalli Rajhara, then in around 89-90. So I first went there in 86.
Yeah.
So
right
from
after
86
your
I've been in
IIT.
Chhattisgarh. Yeah, right after IIT.
So you're basically from Chhattisgarh, no?
I'm
One
from
can say you're a
Chhattisgarh,
Chhattisgarhia.
I would
Chhattisgarhia
call
bolte?
myself a Chhattisgarhia.
Okay. And this is your daughter.
This is my daughter, that's right. This is in Juhu Beach. Yeah.
And where is she now?
She is in Chhattisgarh. She is studying BA Psychology in St. Thomas College.
How often does she visit you?
She's going to come shortly
Okay.
because of the Diwali Dasera holidays.
Yeah.
But she can't come very often.
How hard has it been for her?
Oh, it's been very hard for her. Actually, my whole idea of shifting to Delhi was to really, give her, whole of my life, since the age of 25, I've been involved with trade union, and then later on, in 2000, I became a lawyer, so at the age of 40. and and a human rights activist and all that. So she never had a really, you know, very stable home.
Or a city life, like in a Bombay or
Yeah,
in Delhi.
yeah, exactly. So she was a little unhappy about that. So I in fact shifted because I knew this is a very crucial period for her. She's going to go to college. So I joined a visiting professorship in the National Law University in Delhi, and I took her there.
That was almost 1 year before the case against you.
Yes, just 1
your
year,
arrest.
just 1 year.
Okay.
And that was the time when, you know, it was sort of like me taking a sabbatical from my activism.
Activism ho gaya, and I'm going to focus on my daughter and
Yeah.
you know, let her be happy and get educated in like a city
Precisely.
or a big city.
Yes,
Basically,
yes.
get the big city feel.
Yes.
And
And,
then
of course the opposite had to happen.
Yeah.
So then after that there was the COVID and all, then she was all alone in Delhi and then all the, you know, awful media stuff and everything. It was a very bad time for her, and she had to learn to cope with everything. She's very relieved that I'm out, obviously.
Yeah.
And you know, even traveling down to Pune, they would make it pretty difficult for her. I mean, I would tell her, because we were allowed a week visit only once a week. So I would tell her, you know, you come on a Friday, meet me on a Saturday and then a Monday, or a, you know, Friday and a Monday, so that, you know, you can have 2 meetings before you go. Or she'd try and meet me in court. And they wouldn't even let me hug her, you know. I mean, she had to stand like that, you know. And it's not nice to see your mother, you know, surrounded by police.
And not be allowed to hug.
Yeah.
Or have that basic little physical touch.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Sudha, you were born in Boston, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any early memories of being in the US? How long were you there?
No. In the US, I was for a very short period.
Okay.
I think by the time...
Your parents were
My
academics?
parents were
They were doing
postgraduate, were doing postgraduate studies at that time. So I came back before I was 1. What I have vivid memories of is the period in UK when my mother went to UK when I was about 4, and from the age of between 4 and 11 I was in England, in Cambridge.
Okay.
So I have good memories of that. I mean,
What do you remember of that time? I mean, you were a child, but still.
Well, my house was my mother was always a very generous person, a very much loved teacher, and in fact, I know that even today, a lot of the goodwill I am getting, I mean, whether it is Professor Romila Thapar and Professor Prabhat Patnaik, you know, filing writ petitions for us, or other people supporting us in so many different ways. A lot of them are my mother's friends.
Okay.
Of course, my friends also, but largely my mother's friends, my mother's students. So she was really much loved, and I remember our house used to be a hub for the Indian students, particularly the vegetarians. I mean, they would be like, well, please, please, ma'am.
They were vegetarians?
No, actually, she'd already separated from my father by then, so it was only my mother and me. But by the end of it, the racism had already started. It had begun to become a little ugly.
How?
Well, I remember telephone calls. I mean, I used to come home, and it was a very safe place. So my mother would keep the key under the doormat, and I would open the door and you know, put on the radio and have my, you know, hear some story and have my food or something like that. And there was a pattern. Some people started ringing up and saying, "Blackie, go home. And why are you here?" And when I started reporting that, and then one day the key disappeared.
Oh.
So then my mother got very nervous.
How old were you then?
I was about 9 or 10.
Oh wow, young.
Very young. And then very, you know, sexually offensive things on the phone and stuff. Obviously they could make out there's a little girl speaking. So then she got and she said, anyway, I had no intention of staying abroad. I want to go back to my own country. Whatever the situation might be, we have a right to be there, and we can't be treated like this.
And then you grew up in JNU. You went to you practically grew up on the campus because your mother was teaching there.
Yes. I mean, practically in the sense, I went to Central School. So there was a Central School at IIT campus which was close by, and first I went to Lady Irwin School and then Central School. So all schools in Delhi, and then I went to IIT Kanpur.
Yeah. But one question comes to mind, like you had this life where your parents were academics, then you stayed with your mother who was a professor. Growing up in JNU, there's just so much intellectual debates, you see an atmosphere of academics. A very natural choice would have been to just take academics, be a professor, live in a lovely campus, have a cushy life, teach children things. Why did you choose activism, and after that in Chhattisgarh, which is such a hard life? You know,
Yeah.
it's kind
Well,
of,
that's there's a series of accidents and not just accidents. I think there were certain decisions also. See, my mother was a socialist. I mean, not by declaration. I think just by her very personality. Like she was very warm to students, very warm to karmacharis. I remember somebody going in, she was the dean and she was doing jhadu and somebody came in and dean se milna hai. तो then jhadu करने के बाद बोले आइए मैं ही dean हूँ बताइए क्या क्या करना है. So she had a complete she was very this didn't have these airs and a very modest person though a very sharp intellectual, but she was a very modest person. And so in that sense, I don't know what is it that, but I think my basic training towards getting interested in people's issues. See, I went to IIT Kanpur, another very elite place, very elite place. So we had 31st Avenue and 2nd Street, and most of our batch would just migrate to the US. I mean,
at that time, that
I
was
think
the
in
best.
my batch, very few people would be remaining, and if they remain, they might be as IS or managers or IS, or they become
That's the
presidents of
IIT
corporations. And but mind you, we were heavily subsidized. अभी तो ये JNU वगैरह की बात कर रहे हैं. मुझे तो याद है at that time 450 rupees was our semester fees यार in IIT Kanpur.
Wow.
मतलब our mess bill was more than that. It was 1500 rupees. So but over there was a group of students. So we started this study circle. There was a professor from the physics department who used to organize the study circle, and we really started studying about the labor movement, about the freedom movement, about the anti-imperialist movement. बहुत कुछ पढ़ने लगे, सीखने लगे. I remember I had joined what was called the NSS, not the NCC, but the NSS, National Social Service, I don't know. So in that, I remember how naive we were, So a team of us went. There was a village just outside IIT outside the IIT campus, and we went there. And we saw that some houses are on one side of the Nala and some houses on the other side of the Nala. So Sarpanch ji ka to obviously was a very nice house on the proper side of the Nala. So we went there and we said कि हमको जो बच्चे स्कूल नहीं जा रहे हैं, we want to start a school for them. अरे यहीं कीजिए ना, मैं आपको सब सुविधा करा देता हूँ, this, that and the other. And initially one takes all these things as being very nice. And then we saw that children from the other side would not come. Then we would go to their houses and invite them, they would still not come. Then then the whole harsh reality of caste and how
They were Dalit children.
Yes, they were Dalit children, and there was no way the Sarpanch would allow them in his house.
With the rest.
And attend the school, they don't need to be educated, and they certainly won't come into my house. And why should you nicely educated people from IIT, So that was my first, because I had been in primary school, I was in England, so it hadn't sunk in the realities of caste and these things. It really hadn't sunk in. But us samay se one started understanding these things, and we very firmly said we are going to have the school on the other side. आपके बच्चे आए तो अच्छी बात है. वैसे भी you can afford a tutor and all that. They can't. So I think our priorities were created such a lot of problem for us. Wrote letters, notices to the IIT management कि कैसे students भेज दिए आपने, बिल्कुल cooperate नहीं करते सरपंच के साथ, this, that. Anyway,
So you're creating trouble right from IIT time.
Well, if this is trouble,
we need
I'm
more
a troublemaker. I'm sorry. It seems from the start. So that, and then I got involved with many of us got involved with the mess workers there. They had a beautiful cultural team. I love singing. I mean, I never learned singing, but I love singing. So there was a cultural team. They used to have वो अपना वहाँ की अपनी local भाषा में और मजदूर आंदोलन के बारे में इसके they used to sing a lot, and so one got involved in the lives of workers there. And then while we were there, I remember firing took place in the Rallies factory at Unnao. And we went to see that, and that was just like a Jallianwala Bagh kind of scene. I mean, people were just fired upon.
There was a protest, a factory
Yeah,
protest?
there was a factory protest because people were not paid on time and all.
So they were fired upon.
They were fired upon. So we'd made reports for those things. So there were a lot of activities, and I think that was my coming of age. It's raining. This is typical of Mumbai.
No. It's not
What is it?
it's bright and sunny, but I think it's some
Construction.
It's
Construction,
some construction
okay.
happening.
Okay.
So, in your study circle, what about the rest of the kids? Did they also?
Well, many of
did they
them,
become activists, or?
I don't know that any other person became an activist, but I'm sure that, the way we thought and this thing, they all would definitely be continuing to have those interests, those sympathies, and whatever they're doing, whatever professional work they're doing, maybe they're, professors, maybe they're doctors, maybe they're, whatever profession they're doing. You can't forget these things.
Yeah.
And then, actually, the real, I think, thing came to me. I mean, why particularly Niyogi and Chhattisgarh? That was when actually, this was around 84. And if you remember, people of our age, like 84 is really a very shocking period.
Yeah. It's a very tumultuous time for India.
Tumultuous time. You had the Bhopal gas disaster, you had the Delhi riots, and what was happening to that country. I mean, and my birthday is on the 1st of November.
Okay.
So I was actually on my way in the train on 31st of October.
Wow.
Going to Delhi. And then the rumors came, "Arey, wo to train cut ke Sardar bhar ke la rahe hain," people. There was nothing. It was just rumors. But there was such a terror, and the whole Sikh riot thing happening. And anyway,
So 84 was sort of a jolt.
it was a
And
big
that
jolt.
year must have been really
That November and then
for
December.
Kids that grew up at that.
Yes, and
or
also,
like
yes, and the
teenagers,
whole
adults.
spectacle of the Bhopal gas disaster. I mean, thousands of people just dying. So I remember that time, my period in IIT was 79 to 84. So after that, then I was at Delhi for some time. So that time I remember a group of us. There were some doctors from AIMS, there were some students from JNU. At that time, this Asiad village and all that, 82 was the Asiad Games and all that. So they were building all these flyovers and a lot of 5-star hotels and stadia, and they were bringing in a lot of construction workers. So where JNU is close to that, there were a lot of construction workers camps, almost in barbed wire. They were virtually like concentration camps. And I remember going there, visiting. And there was a friend of ours who was an Odia. He talking to the Odia worker, and that Odia worker crying and saying, we can't go home. We are like bonded over here. We want to go home, and we're not being paid any wages. And my wife is sick. My children are sick. And the next day he wasn't there. I don't know. I think that is the day when it struck me that you can't be light-hearted about these things. You can't just go and help today and come away tomorrow, because when you help today, you might actually cause a damage to that person. And we never found out. We never found out what happened to him. So that is the time when I really became interested, and we started reading, and we read a lot about Shankar Guha Niyogi at that time. He was already very well known as a very different kind of trade union leader. And in 83 he had been arrested under the NSA. So I am not the only one. Okay. He was a trade union leader and he was under NSA. Now what national security risk he was, God alone knows. So obviously the trade unionists are great security risks. So and I remember as students, all of us, went around doing a signature campaign, getting the signatures of the professors in JNU and all that, and for his release. And when he came out, he was very intrigued, who are these kids, Delhi kids jo mere liye itna kar rahe hain. And at that time also, the textile mills in Delhi were closing down, just like they were closing down in Bombay here. So 83, 84, that's the period of the textile strike as well. And textile strike was happening in Delhi as well. So they held a sort of solidarity thing for him. And that's, when he came and he said, okay, why don't you come and visit us in Delhi Rajara? So that is how I reached Dalli Rajara. So for first time we went in 83, we took Battleship Potemkin and Naya Daur and so many films to show there to people, and he was really very welcoming. And I think it was by 1986 that I took a decision to finally go there.
How did your mother take it?
Oh, she was worried. She was worried. She said, "Look, क्या करोगे उधर?" I said, "जो union बोलेगी वो करेंगे." ठीक है, I mean that's all right. I mean in theory and all that, but as a woman, you must know, it's in society is very difficult. You need to, have a status, have a place. And it's not easy to survive. These are very male spaces. I was very confident. No, aisa kuch nahi. So, and in fact, later on, I started getting annoyed with her and said, if it's only that you want me to stay with you, then you say that. I started accusing her of being selfish and all, which she found hurtful, which was very unfair of me. Actually, she really had genuine concern.
Now you know as a mother that it comes from.
No, but I wouldn't prevent my child going. But in the end, I'm so happy. She died on 8th March 1992. I'm so happy that by the time she went, she saw my point of view. And in fact, when Niyogi ji was assassinated, at that time my mother had a brain surgery and brain tumor, and she was recovering at home. And I was in two minds. I mean, do I stay with my mother? Do I go? I mean, our leader has been assassinated. And she heard us talking, me with my friends. And she said, there's no question, you have to go. If you're not there in this time, then what is the point? So at the end of it, and then she said, what is happening to our country? And I remember her seeing Manmohan Singh talking about liberalization and all that. This is 1991. Saying, what has gone wrong with this man? He's just written the South Commission report. And what is now he's talking about liberalization, privatization. Maybe you people are right, you who are going on the streets for this. And we as academics, we have gone on saying these things, gone on saying nobody is listening to us. And they're only listening to the companies. So maybe your way is better than mine. So she came to terms with it.
So
can I offer you some tea?
Yeah, why not? We can go to the kitchen and I'll accompany you.
Yes, sure.
But so we'll come back to this whole liberalization, trade unions.
Yeah.
Them being these pesky characters, that's what they're, known for.
Not even pesky, probably pesky.
Pesky and, not understanding what that development sometimes is a trade-off, and for the larger good, some things have to. So anyway, we'll come to all that later. But there's actually some interesting stuff that I saw on your one essay you had written, which I found it very interesting from your IIT days. I think it was on the internet, and then I think it was PUC that put it out, because at the time of your arrest there was a lot of stuff happening on television. She's dreaded, she's plotting this and that. In case you guys are wondering why we're not addressing the case directly, it's because one of the bail conditions is that you cannot discuss the case.
Exactly.
So we can't really.
So I will really steer clear from
that. Yeah. So we can't get into the details of the case and all that. But because there is this impression created by television news, especially, that Sudha is this shadowy, scary person. This essay had been put out at that time actually, and that's when I came across it, which was basically trying to demystify her life. Like, what has she really done? What is her background? Where does she come from? And in that, it's an essay you wrote of your IIT Kanpur days.
Yeah.
And you've said in it that I love mathematics and still remember the sheer joy and philosophical challenge of grasping the concepts of pure mathematics that I learnt at IIT-K. I also learnt about society, positive and also negative, and decided that I was not an academic.
Yeah.
I feel that I've been able to best utilize the knowledge, skills, confidence I acquired in IIT-K in working with people today. So it's pretty interesting that you had a deep interest in maths.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
See, actually,
because they usually the thing is, arts or humanities wale maths mein bilkul loser hote hain. Unko kuch nahi aata.
I had a deep interest in many different things.
Okay.
I had a deep interest in history. I had a deep interest in literature. I had a deep interest in maths. Now, maybe in today's day time and in today's day, you might be able to get this kind of a combination. But nobody gives such a crazy combination, would give a crazy combination in those days. So you had to either go for science or you go for arts. So,
but what did maths kind of, having this technical training and a mind which is kind of logical, how did you how did that train your mind to then work with people? Because this is the most
Well,
random
as
field.
I said, it was not, maths was one part of it, the other part was literature and history. So I was very emotional about people, I was very concerned about changes in society. So that thing was also always there.
Yeah.
I think the maths has helped me, and I'm
How?
not the only mathematician who's become a lawyer. If you have heard the name of Balagopal, one of the very fine human rights lawyers, he was a mathematician.
Okay.
I think it trains us to be sort of logical and
Yeah.
and not that everything in law is logical.
Yeah. So would you call yourself a trade
Do you have
unionist?
sugar?
Yeah, very little though.
Little. Okay. Okay.
So would you call yourself a trade unionist first or a lawyer first? Or both?
A trade unionist.
A trade unionist. So can you explain what is a trade unionist really? What is the
trade
job of a trade unionist?
Now
Because
that-
it's again a much maligned word. They are irritating people. They do dharnas. They're lazy. Sometimes they use excuse of workers' right when they actually don't want to work and scam the company out of the money that they have. So tell us what is
I know they are a much maligned lot.
yeah.
First of all, let me tell you, in all his trade union life and in all of my trade union life, we have only worked with contract workers.
Okay.
Workers who were not even getting minimum wages.
Okay.
And who were probably doing, the toughest and the most dangerous, the toughest and most dangerous work in any factory. I mean, initially, of course, Niyogi ji was, of course, working in the mines. And by the time I had joined him, that phase had more or less stabilized, and the Chhattisgarh Mines Shramik Sangh, which was his union, that had sort of become well established. And the initial situation in those mines was, it was like a jungle. The contractors would take any person, make them work any number of hours. Pregnant women are also working over there. People are having babies on the side. It was a mess. It was, making that into a humane working place. I mean,
So make the workplace more humane for the workers.
Yeah, well, of course, that means you have a proper wage.
Yeah.
It also means that he had this concept of what was called layback wages, which is that okay, I come to work and you don't have work for me right now. Give me a layback wage, let me go home. In the next shift, people will work. So
What is a layback wage in the sense that?
That means basically that if I don't get work, it's not my fault.
Okay.
I'm coming for work.
Okay.
But because it happens. For loading and unloading and things like that, there might not be a regular schedule. That's the thing for which they use contract labor.
Okay.
And that is the justification for contract labor, but it's not a justification. Because every work is like that. No work is continuous. The work of a journalist is not continuous, the work of a prime minister is also not continuous. You don't work 24 hours, 24/7, every minute you're working. Aisa nahi hota. You work sometime, you work, and you need to have a healthy atmosphere in order to work. Har ek ko chahiye, everybody needs it. So, first, having this 8-hour shift, having the proper wages, having, so that was the beginning. And and then all the, the thing about Niyogi was that his concept was that ours is not an 8-hour union, ours is a 24-hour union. We touch all aspects of a worker's life. So, education, culture,
Healthcare.
So, this whole thing about setting up a hospital, setting up schools, 11 schools they ran. They ran 11
Wow.
schools.
That was
And-
a trade union group that ran 11 schools.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
They ran cooperative societies. They in fact, a huge anti-alcoholism campaign led by the women, by Mahila Mukti Morcha. Huge.
So really stepping in where the government was not doing anything, and also the corporations had no interest in doing it.
Exactly.
Because
And,
it's
and
not.
that, mind you, and these were the contract workers of the public sector, not of the private sector.
Okay.
They were the contract
Yeah, of course,
workers
back
of
then.
the Bhilai steel plant. So, in the backyard of the public sector, there always has been, this group, the contract workers, who have never really got their fair share, but there they did. And, the setting up this, and one thing, kabhi wo netaon ko, he never would allow leaders to go without work. So, I mean, You see, normally you find in factories when somebody becomes a leader,
Huh.
the management will say, okay, you don't need to go for work.
Huh.
Matlab,
Okay.
they only encourage it because then
Then you
get
can
closer.
co-opt. You can co-opt. Yeah.
Never allowed any worker to do that.
Okay. Once you got
All leaders themselves continue to work till the end. So, it was very different culture. And then giving up alcohol, having a certain pride in your, this is our hospital, this is our this thing, and many, and for example, he dug out the history of an Adivasi hero called Veer Narayan Singh, who was of the 1857. At the same time as Surendra Sai, I don't know whether you've heard of Surendra Sai. If you're from Odisha, you'll have heard. But 1857, it was not only in these.
the revolt was not just limited to the heartland.
Yes,
Basically.
because actually it began because of the 1856 famines. There was such terrible famine. People did not have enough to eat. So Veer Narayan Singh was supposed to be someone who, he sort of gathered together people, and he sort of stormed the go down of the moneylenders. First he went and asked very politely, 2 or 3 times. I mean, this is a historical. He went and asked very politely, and if you notice, working people always ask for things politely to start with.
Yeah.
It's only when they are not given not listened to that they. So then he finally said, okay, now I am going to take this and I will return it to you in the next harvest.
Okay.
And he just stormed this thing and distributed to his people. So he was known as a bandit in the. So the
According to the
zamindars at
British.
that time. And it's very interesting that the Misras of that time, who were the zamindars called in the British to follow Veer Narayan Singh, and there was a guerrilla warfare with Veer Narayan Singh in the jungles and so on. And for a long time he kept them away. And as is usually the story, he was betrayed by somebody and called somewhere and poisoned him. So not poisoned, but he was captured. And then finally there are 2 stories. One says that he was hanged. That is what we believe. And that is the story which Niyogi ji had told us. The other was that he was blown from the mouth of a cannon in Raipur city.
Okay.
So that that memorial is still there.
Okay.
And you will be surprised to know that the Shukla family, Ravi Shankar Shukla and all, descend from that Mishra family.
Oh.
So it's a, ruling runs in the blood.
Yeah. Should I help? Do you want some help with this?
I can manage this.
So and then at trade unionism, and then of course at 40 you became a lawyer.
At 40,
Because you probably figured कि भाई इतने cases लड़ने हैं, yeah. I mean everything has to go to the. So this is one thing important to people to understand also, that when you work for workers' right, it is not just dharna or sitting out, or it is basically also approaching proper courts.
Yes.
Going to the law,
Hey,
using the system to get justice.
You need that. You need that.
So it's not working outside the system. It's basically very much working in the system.
The Trade Union Act was actually, I personally believe, and that the Trade Union Act was one way. Now, who wants more tea and who wants less tea? And there's more tea. Lippy, do you like some?
We'll have after.
You will have
These
after.
guys will have after the shoot.
Yeah.
Oh,
You want to take a break?
No.
No? Okay. Our nice camera people refuse tea,
Okay.
working.
See, those who work are always left in the last.
Yeah. Workers' rights. But I'm also working. You can't say I'm not working.
True. See, that is the thing. You should work with that sensitivity that they have a role and you have a role. And there's sometimes when you are working and they're not.
Yeah.
This is one of my really favorite quotes. It takes a lot of things to change the world. Anger and tenacity, science and indignation, the quick initiative, the long reflection, the cold patience and the infinite perseverance, the understanding of the particular case and the understanding of the ensemble. Only the lessons of reality can teach us to transform reality. It's a quote by Bertolt Brecht.
And you put it here
Because I like to see it all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you became a lawyer. We were discussing in the kitchen that at 40 you turned to law. So, the thinking was really that you have to take it to its logical conclusion, but you will have to fight those cases.
Well, there was a specific thing also, which was that, you see, I was talking to you at the moment about Dalli Rajara, about the mines, but the actual movement in which Niyogi lost his life was in the private industries in Bhilai. In 1991, he shifted to Bhilai. And you see, there was the Bhilai steel plant and there were the auxiliaries and ancillaries, private industries, where there was nothing called labor law. 16 घंटे काम होता था, there would be no minimum wage, गुंडागर्दी, and it was awful. And people there came out of all the companies and gave their demand charter, 8-point demand charter, basically saying what? हमको wage slip दो, हमको gate pass दो, हमको minimum wage दो, हमको all the things which are already there in the labor law, ये हमको दो. And it is during that, it was like his first parcha was called Small Rivers Will All Come Together to Form a Ocean. So it was an ocean of workers in the Bhilai industrial area who started revolting against the private industrialists who were actually sponging off the Bhilai steel plant, really. So they got him assassinated, and he was assassinated. After the assassination, many cases started. You see, for one, there was his murder case. Then when a long protest happened and there was a police firing, there was the police firing inquiry commission. Then later on, you see, this is also the time 92 when the Babri Masjid thing happened. And when Babri Masjid happened, actually the workers of Bhilai actually took out a Maun Julus with patti and all that, saying in Bhilai we will not allow any communal violence. And there was no communal violence. It was a BJP ruled state at that time. It was part of Madhya Pradesh, you remember. There was no violence. Okay. So the Bhilai workers took an initiative. They had taken that same initiative in 1984 in Dalli Rajara. Interestingly, in 1984, during the Sikh riots, actually there were some sharab thekedars who had made, because of that anti-alcoholism movement, they were very miffed with it, because in some places, of course, the union went and broke bottles and all that. So those guys tried to assassinate Niyogi multiple times. They did not succeed. But when 1984 happened, in fact, he was in Rajnandgaon leading another struggle in the textile mills. He said, just pack up, nothing now, the country is going to go into crisis, let's go back to Dalli Rajara. In Dalli Rajara, which was the mining town, put on a mic and said all Sikhs in this area are free to come to the union office. And for 3 weeks or so, the union, sorry, just a minute. नहीं बेटा, मेहमान आए हैं आज.
क्या हुआ? Who's it?
Bread and naan.
अच्छा.
They realize that not everybody can climb up and down 4 floors many times. So they actually put a megaphone and invited all Sikhs to come.
That you'll be safe here.
Yeah, and Sikhs actually came and camped, and there was no violence. And not only that, the Sikhs among them went and got those sharab thekedars, and they said, ki now touch his feet. He has saved your life. Now, see, that could have been so easily manipulated by Niyogi. He could have said, oh, this is a chance. These are the guys who are trying to kill me. You have a free hand, go after them. He was never an opportunist in his politics. Never.
So, but you were talking about your lawyering.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So then, so basically so all these cases started coming, and then, then Babri Masjid happened, there was violence in Bhopal, and then there was president's rule in Madhya Pradesh. And later on the Congress party came. And the Congress party referred all the cases. What had happened was, all these workers from 16 industries who had asked for these demands had been just thrown out. So there were 4,200 workers on the roads who were just asking for basic labor laws. The joke is, while they were out, people inside started getting all those things. So unki ladai ki wajah se, other people got something. And this always happens. See, you should never judge a movement by what the people who fight get. But sometimes the people who don't fight,
what do they get? What does it do to the
community?
Workers, basically,
So,
or the industry?
yeah. So basically, and the joke was, there was a negotiation going on with the industrialists It's so ridiculous. And there were 7 demands. The 8th demand was take back all the retrenched workers. And they said we'll agree all the 7 demands, 8th demand we won't agree. So if you're not going to take back anybody, who are you going to give those 7 demands to? That's ridiculous. And then they went, it's misuse of media. They went around saying how stubborn they are. मतलब एक मांग पे अटके हुए हैं, हम 7 मांग देने को तैयार हैं. They're not ready to, we said we want only 1 मांग. Take us back first. Rest of the things we'll negotiate with you later. पहले हमको वापस लो.
तो वापस लिया फिर फाइन?
नहीं लिया. आज तक वो लोग बाहर हैं काम से.
और बाकी
92
बाकी वर्कर्स का लाइफ इंप्रूव हो गया लेकिन
yes
अंदर they got everything.
हुआ था. Now it's again it's going down. It's like Sisyphus rolling the stone and all going down again. Now you have labor codes and all that. So anyway, that was the time when a lot of legal work had to be done. So there was the Niyogi murder case, there was the Bhilai firing case, there was the all that. And ठीक है, we were few of us who were able to do the writing and typing and this and that. And that's the time when it occurred ki yaar, we need an in-house lawyer. And then when the labor cases started, I remember going to one Jabalpur lawyer and he had asked for 50,000 rupees and we took some 20,000. Contract workers, how much can you give? Yeah? And he threw that 20,000 back and nahi, 50,000 ke bina main appear nahi hoonga and all that.
In-house.
Yeah, so basically people said, Didi, ek to you anyway work so hard. So you might as well become a lawyer. So then that's the time I also adopted my daughter. So while I was looking after her,
You studied law.
I studied law. So 96 I adopted her, 96 I joined law, and 2000.
Where did you feel the need to adopt at that point?
Before that I had a bad miscarriage.
Okay.
In 1993 I had a very bad miscarriage, 93 or 94. And in the 8th month, so it was really very bad. And the doctors of Shaheed Hospital, which is the hospital set up by Niyogi ji, they say कि भाई यार तुम किसी शहर में होते you would have died, because यहाँ पर people knew you so well, they just lined up to give blood, and we just checked the group and went on giving. We didn't do 101 tests and let you die, because I think some 13 units or something had to be infused. So they used to joke and say, देखो स्मिता पाटिल भी मर गई लेकिन तुम जी गई.
But what was it like for a woman at that point? Like your mother had apprehensions and all that, but you were, I mean, it was a male-dominated space.
It was.
Then you're getting pregnant, you have a miscarriage, you adopt a child. So doing these things, were you doing
it was
alone?
See, I'll tell you one thing, that if I had not become a lawyer, I don't think I would have been very easily accepted as a leader.
Okay.
Becoming a lawyer gave me an additional advantage.
She knows the system.
Yeah, and also they saw me arguing the cases. They saw me, interpreting the documents. They saw me doing that, and they placed some faith on me. So,
can you tell us about a case, one, important case in your life related to trade union, workers' rights?
Workers' rights.
A sort of, or maybe a peculiar case, anything that really struck with you? Or
Well, the most major case in my life was the ACC case of contract workers. There were 573 contract workers in the ACC company.
ACC?
Cement works, which is now taken over by Adani, mind you.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think we have just about we're going to lose whatever we have gained. Anyway, it is all a matter of the future. So ACC, you see, the cement industry is a peculiar industry because it is mostly in the private sector. It is not public sector. See, Bhilai steel plant was, and you have to see the difference between the public and the private sector in that Niyogi ji stayed from 1977 till 89 in the Bhilai steel plant in the public sector, and within 1 year of his entering the private sector, he was assassinated. So the cruelty and the sharpness and the repression of the private sector, you can just see by that juxtaposition. At least in the public sector, there were people you could argue with, you could make them see reason. So anyway, so actually at that time, initially the private sector cement plants, the unions were very strong, and they had got about an agreement which was called the Cement Wage Award, which said that for the production processes there should be no contract workers. Okay, so in the production process they should be all permanent workers. Only for loading and unloading you can use contract workers, but they should be paid the same wages. Wage rate should be the same as the permanent workers. So that was the arrangement. So first the problem was that the loading and unloading workers went to Niyogi and said, please come, because we are not getting the proper wages like we should be getting. So he sat on hunger strike, and lo and behold, they got it. And in fact, it was after this ACC thing that all the workers of the industrial area started flocking, and then that Bhilai movement started. But anyway, now later on a technique which the ACC started using was, they started, as the permanent workers were retiring, they wouldn't recruit fresh permanent workers. They would put contract workers in the process work and show their contract to be unloading and loading.
Okay. But they were doing other stuff.
Of course. So that is the thing, that was a major case, and I think it was not a case which I could have won if I was not right there among the workers. Because what did we, first of all, there was a reference made that should these people be regularized. There was a list of 573 people, should these people be regularized. And I remember on the very first day, the first witness we had put up, the management went to his house and he was terrified and he didn't arrive. And I remember I was told this by somebody, and then I took other union comrades, went to his house and said, "Kya baat hai?" And he said, "Ki nahi, mujhe aisa bol diya hai, they, they'll kill me." So I said, "Okay, we'll file an affidavit that you have been threatened." So if you are there on the spot, now obviously they couldn't have said this to some faraway lawyer sitting in an office who has no appreciation, and who has no concern also about your safety. So right from the first day, and basically what we did was, I asked them, tell me things, how can we prove that you're actually doing work which is not loading and unloading? There was no proof for it. So then people started showing me things. Look at this, Didi, this is the thing which we wear. This is the
ID card?
Yeah, this is what we wear when we go to the power plant. So I said, okay, so each of you produce it. So the workers produced and said, this is our power plant thing, and they couldn't reply. Then another worker said that, so and so worker was with me and he fell into the hopper, and these are the papers which show that he was given compensation. So again the judge asked,
fallen into a hopper if you weren't doing
exactly, if you were not, so meticulously one by one, all the 31 contractors, we had to cross-examine them and this and that, and finally we got a very good order. Now in the meanwhile,
the order said that you can't get
reinstate everybody as permanent workers. But in the meanwhile, what had happened, each contractor was retrenching their workers. And each time we would tell the court that, see, the people in the reference are being retrenched. He would say, but the ACC would say, I'm not doing it, the contractor is doing it. But we would say, but that's our whole point, that you have the control over the contractor. So even though we had an interim order in our favor saying that the conditions of work cannot be changed, out of those 573, there were only 350 left at the end of the day. Okay. Then we said, okay, theek hai. Implement this. We went on strike to implement it. They went to the High Court. Then again till 2011. So this started in 1992. The reference was made in 2000. 2006 we got the order. 2011 it was decided by the High Court, in which again the numbers were slightly reduced. We said, okay, doesn't matter, at least these many people you regularize. We're not going to go any further. But it's ACC, it has pots of money. So, and that is the time when an interesting thing happened, that ACC was taken over by Lafarge, by Holcim. And Holcim is a multinational which is amenable to the OECD. So we actually made a complaint with the OECD. And we said, look, this is what Holcim is doing. It is ignoring Indian laws, it's ignoring court orders. So finally, I didn't have a passport then, and I still don't have a passport now. But two workers from Jamul went all the way to Switzerland to negotiate with Holcim executives. And then the matter was brought back, and finally some agreement was.
So thanks to foreign intervention.
Not foreign intervention, foreign solidarity, because it was the foreign trade unions there who supported us, who paid our tickets, who translated for us, the global unions. So because they are also realizing that all the work is going out of the European countries, it's coming here dirt cheap. So their plants are closing down. So we need a solidarity. We need to even out living standards everywhere. Otherwise, capital is going to fly to the place where it can get the cheapest labor. So it was a case which is dependent little bit on law, little bit on struggle, little bit on negotiation, little bit on international intervention. But such a small thing took such a long time to do.
Wow.
So that was the last thing I did before I quit.
But see, you as a lawyer, you're someone who saw how slow it is.
Yeah.
And you saw other people kind of struggle through claims, like this case you said from the 90s to the 2000s, and then the same thing is kind of happening to you now,
Yes.
where you're
Justice delayed is justice denied.
you're seeing how patient you have to be sometimes,
Oh yes.
and how your freedom can just go. So how has the last few years been for you? Especially, like, was it surreal, like, shit, I was doing this for other people and I was seeing how people were going through the motions of law? What has your mind space been?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've always been helping the poorest of the poor. So I'm well aware of all the problems of the law. And you see, there are two kinds of law actually. There's one kind of law where we ask for our rights, like the labor law, the forest rights law, the environmental law, the women's law, the SC/ST law. वो कभी ठीक से implement नहीं होता. And there's the other, the status quo, the repressive laws. IPC, CRPC, UAPA, TADA, POTA, MPLA,
बहुत efficiency से
वो
implement
बहुत
होता है.
efficiency से काम करता है फटाफट, there is no absolutely. So that problem I was very well aware of. Of course, when they knocked on my door on 28th August 2018, I was not expecting it. And yeah, so I mean, I had for a long time, as I said, I mean, I had been in my by that time 25, 30 years in Chhattisgarh, because not only my union, but when I went to Bilaspur, which is the seat of the High Court, I was supporting other movements also. So almost all movements against corporates, land acquisition cases, environmental cases, forest rights cases, many of them would come to me. So I had cases against Vedanta, Tata, SR, DB Power, Lafarge, Holcim, Bhilai Steel Plant, Balco, like the works. So I am quite aware that I was not popular with all these people. And if you're not popular with corporates, then it's difficult to be popular with the government. So I realized that this could be happening to me. Of course, the first thing which strikes you when you're arrested and you're taken to the lockup and you're taken to the jail is the sheer indignity of it. Like you're taken there and you, acha, kapde utaro, strip and all that, to बैठो, squat so that we check whether you've hidden something in your inner parts. Open your hair, you might have hidden something in your hair. So it is, I mean, you feel extremely undignified, your things are thrown around. No, all this you can't keep in the jail, all this you can't keep in the jail. And there's so many things you can't keep a chammach, you can't keep, all these can be used as weapons. You can't keep a nail cutter, you can't, of course scissor, no question. Needle, no question. So, and I thought, अच्छा ठीक है, कंफर्टेबल होगा, ट्रैक सूट और ये टी शर्ट पहन लेंगे, आई मीन क्या करना है वहाँ पे, लेडीज जेल तो है. नो 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 नो, दिस मैनली क्लोथ्स आर नॉट अलाउड. सलवार कुर्ता और साड़ी. अच्छा, एंड द जोक वाज इन द लॉकर दे टोल्ड अस यू कांट कीप द दुपट्टा, यू माइट हैंग योरसेल्फ. So they used to force us to keep the dupatta outside. So I hadn't brought any dupattas when I came to the jail. No, where is your dupatta? You're coming to the office without a dupatta. So I mean, office of the jail, like okay. That's in the gate of the jail. So whenever you go to meet some officer, or you go to for the mulakat, or you go to the hospital or whatever. So it was it was, and I think initially the staff also was, sort of, they had heard only, what they had seen on TV and all that, and I don't know what they thought I was, Poolan Devi or Pragya Thakur, or what they thought I was. I have no idea what they thought I was. But
Pragya Thakur would have been welcome. Flowers thrown on you if you go Pragya Thakur.
But anyway, I mean, whether I, they thought you were Daku Sultana or something like that. I mean, like, but eventually, I think they all became very friendly because they saw, both myself and Professor Shoma Sen, both of us were there, that we were very reasonable people. We, asked according to the rules, like we only tried to help other people. We never created any, like, we never threw around our weight, we never asked any privileges. We always stood in the line, took things with everybody else, took everything with everybody.
Unionizing in the jail?
Oh, in Yerwada, though, we were kept in separate cells. We were kept in fact in the Phansi yard. So that was, like we were in separate cells and there was a corridor. And that whole thing is like one cage, So the cage is right put in the middle. So we were not allowed to interact with anybody else.
Why is it called a Phansi yard?
Because the people were, death sentence were there.
Oh.
There were two sisters. I don't know whether you've heard the case. Now their death sentence has been removed and they're now serving their life imprisonment terms. But they had become like berserk, those women. They had been there for 25 years. 25 years. So you can imagine how crazy they were. So like they would pick fights with us, they would get jealous if we talk to any of the madams. They would, if we are given so much tea and they're given so much tea, they'll just think that these people are getting more tea than us and fight. And
what were they in for? What is the death sentence?
The death sentence was because apparently it was a big racket, and my understanding afterwards we became a little friendly with each other, and I actually tried to help them also. And try to, Dr. Yug Chaudhary, who's my lawyer, is also a death penalty expert. So, tried to get them some help from him also. So, in fact, he was the one who got the interim stay on the death penalty. So, they must have been the last part of a very big chain in which children were being kidnapped, placed in a place, and then sold off for probably organ trafficking. Now that is not possible with two, powerless poor women. I mean, you need contacts with like hospitals, you need moneyed contacts, and you need to do that. I mean, so probably these were the houses or these were the women who are actually engaged in getting those kids and keeping them.
But they weren't the masterminds of it, basically.
Yeah, but many children were then found murdered.
So it's a serious crime.
So it was a very serious crime, and they were the only ones who were caught in it. So basically, they got the death sentence. And everybody else got out of it.
Everybody else got out of it?
Matlab, there were a couple more. One of them turned informer.
Okay.
And put the whole thing on these people.
You also had celebrity visit the jail. There was Rhea.
That was in Baikala. See, the nice thing was in Baikala, we were in the barrack. So there it was, though it was very crowded and the usual problems of overcrowding and all that, but it was nice. And there I didn't have any time at all because half the time I was writing applications for people.
Okay.
So I was the in-house lawyer over there. I was first the in-house lawyer for the trade union and then I was the in-house lawyer for the jail.
Applications for them in the sense?
Like during the COVID time, interim bail and this and that, and then even applications, because sometimes like when they're taken to court and their lawyer doesn't come and they want to say something. So if they take it in writing and give it, then at least something will happen, and many times they're not so articulate.
Right.
Most of them were illiterate, in fact. I think 85% of people who are in there are illiterate.
So Rhea had visited your...
Yeah. So Rhea was like, So, of course, like from before only that Sushant thing had been going on in the media, like it was like crazy. And at that time itself we used to say that, it's too much is being made of it and Rhea is just being made a scapegoat and all that. We were very unhappy with it. So I was very glad that she was not brought into the barrack, but she was kept in the special cell. I think she was kept there so that she needn't see the TV. Because people would keep that TV on and all the time hearing about your case and hearing about it would have been too upsetting for her. So she and...
But you can watch TV in jail? Like you have a common room where all the inmates...
No, every barrack has a TV. But the remote of the TV is with whom is the question.
Who is it with?
So it is with the senior Qaidi, the Kamwali, who is usually a senior either not... See, in the Baikala jail, it's an under trial jail, so it's not usually convicts. It's normally a warder. Like in Yerwada, they're like 50% convicts and under trial. So only convicts are made warders. Actually, they should have convicts coming here also as warders.
So the Kamwalas are basically the senior people who've been in the jail for a while.
For a while, and whom these people also pay something. They're supposed to be cleaning up the toilets and...
But they're convicts.
No, they're under trials, but long-standing under trial. They could have been for 7 years, 5 years.
So the remote is usually with them.
Yeah, so they decide which to, so farmers movement कभी देखने को नहीं मिलता था. When they would go out with quickly, थोड़ी देर farmers movement देख लेते हैं please. NDTV लगा देते. मतलब NDTV तो दिखता ही नहीं था. But Rhea के time में पूरा 24 घंटे Rhea.
News was on.
Yeah. And I must say, I mean, for somebody who had been thrown into a situation like that, I mean, at least for me, I can say that I've been an activist all my life. I mean, we've done dharnas and pradarshans, and we know कि पुलिस ऐसा करती है, पीछे पड़ती है, arrest करती है. And for her, it was like a very young person. She took it so sportingly, and she was so friendly with people. She was so friendly with the children. And you see, the first day, everybody will go, Rhea kahan hai, Rhea kahan hai. You know how people are. But she would never, make a thing of it. And when she left, she had some money remaining in her account. So for all the barracks, she asked for sweets to be, given and all that. And everybody came down to wish her goodbye. And then everybody said, Rhea, one dance. And she actually obliged.
She actually danced for the
So
convicts?
sweet. Yeah. She danced for the convicts. And she said, everybody thinks that people who are in jail are very bad people. And they're all criminals. And I understand that all of you are under trials. It's not even been proved that you're criminals.
Because she had already been proven guilty. So I think she would really understand what it means to wait for...
Yeah, to face a media trial and to, be pronounced guilty even before the trial starts. And then she said that I'll take home all these memories of how you people are living out here and this thing.
But you've also been at the receiving end of media trial, and when you're out and when people get to know Sudha Bharadwaj, do you get any hostility or...
Surprisingly not. I have not encountered hostility. In fact...
no one's shouting outside your door, calling you urban Naxal and all that?
No. But I think I owe that to a lot of things. I owe that to a lot of, goodwill of the trade union movement, goodwill of the civil liberties movement. And I think also people are becoming wiser. I think they are not believing everything which is said to them. The times are coming when they are not believing everything which is said to them.